Dzień dobry, proszę Państwa, witam z Wrocławia, z dworca Siebockiego. Jesteśmy w tej chwili właśnie na Luftgekühlt, czyli chłodzone powietrzem. To jest impreza, na której każdy kolejny samochód jest jeszcze bardziej niesamowity i nie ma nieciekawych samochodów. Jest absolutnie wyjątkowy, więc jest na co popatrzeć.
Let's begin with the most important thing, so I will introduce our guests. Firstly, Wojciech Grzegorski, Managing Director of Porsche in Poland.
Hi guys, good evening.
And secondly, one of the most titled drivers of his generation. He won Inter Alia twice, Le Mans in GT2 class, and right now he is one of the founders of Luftgekühlt. Please, warm welcome for Patrick Long.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for being here. We're excited to be in Poland. This is going to be quite the party tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure.
Or tonight.
And for sure, a couple of questions for you. Not only from me, but I also suppose that the others will have them as well. But maybe let's begin with Wojtek. Wojtek, what does it mean to you that Luftgekühlt take place here in Wrocław, in Poland? And secondly, what are your private impressions when it comes to air-cooled cars?
Yeah, so Luftgekühlt in Poland is a dream come true. It all started when we were configuring the PR cars, and I always wanted to configure them in silver, but Marek, head of marketing, always told me, but silver only looks good in California with the sun. So we said, so how do we make it work that we bring a bit of California to Poland? So that's what it is, a dream come true. Air-cooled 911s, I mean, I bought the first one 20 years ago. It's the biggest passion that I have apart from my family life. I do restore them myself. I do the engine work myself. So, I mean, if it doesn't leak, it's not a Porsche. If it's not an air-cooled engine, it's not a proper car. That's what it is.
You said about California, maybe weather today is not comparable to California, but in general, how's about your first impression, Patrick, here in Wrocław?
Yeah, it's been amazing. I came out with Jeff Swart in March to meet the team and to see the venue. And I instantly was blown away. It was my first time in Poland. I spent 7 years living in Europe in the late 90s into the early 2000s when I was chasing my dream to be a professional racing driver. And I lived in Italy, and Robert Kubica would come over with his dad in a small Iveco van, just him and his dad. And we were in these big teams with massive transporters and 20 engines, and they would come. He was in one category below me with Nico Rosberg, and he would win. He was always in the top three. And I learned quickly that Poland always comes with big power, big passion, big heart, and he didn't need all the fancy stuff. And I loved that, and I always wanted to visit, and I still see him when I'm racing. And so where I'm going with this is it was my first time visiting Poland when we came here in March, and I just fell in love with the city, and I look forward to seeing more parts of the country in the future. But in regards to this venue and working with the team, it's been incredible. I think one of the essence of Luft is taking our regular viewers and subscribers outside of their comfort zone. One of the common questions I've had in the last couple of months since we announced this event is, why Poland? Why not Germany? Why not England? And I said, we've already done England and Germany. We want to go to new horizons and meet new people and tell new stories and continue to challenge the theory that predictability is the only way.
Yeah, basically, it would be great if you could shortly elaborate on the whole idea behind Luftgekühlt, because we all know why we gathered here, but it would be great to hear about the genesis.
Yeah, I started with the company as a young driver in the junior program in 2002, and I lived in Münzheim, just at the bottom of the hill from Weissach. So every day I went to work, and I was completely immersed and exposed to the culture of Porsche from the PR side, from the motorsport side, and from the development side of R&D for the road cars. But I quickly realized that heritage and the legacy, both in racing and on the street, was a huge part of the DNA of the company, and I had to learn a lot. And as I studied it, and I went to the museum, and I went to the library at Weissach, there were all these acronyms, and there were all these abbreviations, and of course there were all these numbers, model numbers. It was like a second language I had to learn besides German. And my first exposures, 2 or 3 months on the job, was jumping into the Carrera Panamericana 550, the Fletcher Aviation car from the museum, and I was completely smitten by the experience of driving a 4-cam car, how visceral it was, how emotional it was. I didn't really know what I was driving. If they would have told me how much that car was worth, I probably wouldn't have done the things that I did. But luckily I didn't crash it and I got more calls. So this is a long way of telling you that I fell in love with the air-cooled culture, the experience of driving the cars. It was a drug. It completely brought me back to my childhood, the first time I took the wheel by myself. There was nothing else but driving and the road in front of me. So as I started collecting my own vintage Porsches, I recognized that there was an untapped market. There was so many people who were so curious about vintage Porsches, but they didn't know where to learn. They didn't know where to experience these cars. And I decided I'm going to tell the story of air-cooled, the entire story of air-cooled from the beginning to the end in 1998. And every sort of model, every type of car, whether it was a restored car or a survivor, a race car, a street car. But the first event was 40 cars and 200 people. So I had a lot of history to cover with only 40 cars. And I expected a few of my friends and a few cars and just to have a fun gathering. And the first event in Venice, California, as far as I could see down the road, was Porsches parked on both sides of Lincoln Boulevard, a big road in Venice, California. And so I knew that we had a big fish on the line. There was a huge untapped market and a lot of Porsche passion that resonated with our style and with the idea of starting an event at 10 in the morning instead of 7 and serving tacos and beer and having families and it was about dogs. It was about the human connection. The cars were the excuse, but then we met all of these new type of people and we told stories of the venue. The venue is so much of a big ingredient of our formula because there's history in this venue here. And we love to talk about things besides cars. We love to talk about cars, but we love to talk about other things. And we love that when people come to our events, they meet new friends and they forge new relationships. So that's a really long answer to say that we didn't know what we were doing, but we were passionate.
Yeah, for sure. Luftgekühlt stands for community spirit, as you already said. But when it comes to community spirit, what are your private impressions when it comes to this kind of events, when it is possible for you to not only focus on cars, but also on people? It is the question for both of you.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a great opportunity to combine the customer base and the family that is driving the modern cars with the classic scene, and most of the time is those two interlink and mingle. Most of us do love the old cars as much as we love the new cars, and I think it's just creating an occasion that we can bring the two sides of the family, if you like. Someone who likes the disco techno party from the nowadays with the guys who are still the rock band lovers, and create one big event. And this is what Porsche stands for, and we love to do it in Poland as well. To be inclusive, to invite everybody, to have families and dogs, like Patrick said. That's what it's all about. And actually, my sons will be here in a couple of minutes. They just finished school and they are coming. And when you look into the eyes of small kids, and not only boys, because we have some girls here as well, and when you see how they look at the objects like they would be alive, and they fall in love with them, that's the great passion that we want to inspire and bring, and that's the community for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's the unfair advantage when you have a legacy on and off the track. There's so much storyline and there's so much passion, but in the end, relationships between humans is the tangible when we walk away. I mean, the amount of friends that I see here that I've connected with through the brand that are lifelong friends. I mean, being with the company now for 20 years, I pretty much owe them everything, because in some way, everything that I touch on a daily basis rooted from Porsche. And that's the most authentic sort of marketing that I could ever have to stand behind. And that part of it is truly special when you step back and process that in what it creates. And somebody asked me once, what is the Porsche, what is the attraction to the brand? And I said, I don't have that answer, but I can give you my personal opinion. And I said, there's something about when you have creativity and design, and then you have function and engineering. If you think about the products or you think about the people in your world, when they have both, they're special, they're unique. And I think that when you look at the roots of the company and who was behind it, there were engineers and designers. And that's something truly unique when you think about all the different types of car brands and choice that there is out there. And I think that they remain true to that in the product today, just as they did with their first product. And the last part of it is where the idea to build a Porsche came from. And of course, the famous saying, you know, I was looking for the sports car of my dreams. I couldn't find it, so I decided to build my own. I am so inspired by that, and that really comes back to Luft. I was looking for an automotive gathering, and I wasn't connecting. I had the car, but I wasn't connecting with the types of events that were out there. So I was like, hey, you know, I know a lot of people, and I have this alternate universe. On the weekends, I don't hang out with car people. I hang out with creatives. I hang out with artists and musicians and visionaries in a different world, just to get away from motorsport, because I was so immersed in it. And why not bring those worlds together? So I'm loving that this is actually resonating in markets outside of California, because at the beginning it was just about doing something 10 minutes from my house that was convenient.
Great to see that your ideas basically came into the flesh, and yeah, we're glad that it is possible for us to have you here. But let's talk for a while also about the cars. Because I highly believe that you have some private highlights right here. We know that there are 6 cars from Porsche Museum as well. But yeah, I would like to ask both of you about your personal highlights during Luftgekühlt in Wrocław.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of all the model lines, to be honest. And it for me it's difficult because it changes with time. I started off with the 993s. That was my big love as the last air-cooled 911, and actually that is the first Porsche I ever owned. Actually, the first Porsche I was ever driven in, and my uncle did that back in the 90s, actually 80s. Mid 90s. Sorry, 993. So I was 95, 96. He used to live in Germany, and he came to Poland with a black 993 Cabriolet, and that was probably an event on its own to have a Porsche in Poznań. And I got into the car and I fell in love. So the first kind of 10, 15 years, that was all about 993s. But then the G models started to kick into my passion. And those are the 2 cars I actually own, the G model and 993. To be honest, I have not had the time to see all the cars. But as I was just walking in the second time here, I saw a 993, a beautiful Miami Blue RS, which is a super special and a cool car. Because that's almost a race car, but it looks like a street car. And I would say the second one is one of the first car to bear the GTS badge back there, under the cool Bar Urycha, so the typical Polish bar name. So I would say the GTS back there and the Miami Blue 993 RS for the moment, but we still have the evening and the whole day of tomorrow. So ask me again tomorrow.
I will.
I don't want to bore you guys with my Porsche passion, so I'm just going to pick a couple really quick. We're calling the train platform, the original train platform, Jeff Swart, who's here and probably still working, the creative visionary behind so much of what we do. He calls it the catwalk. And on the catwalk, there's some special cars. Right at the center, the one white car that's perpendicular is 91710. You know, we've all heard about 917s, and I've always admired their aesthetics, but driving a 917 is one of the most dangerous experiences I've ever had. When you strap into that car, and if you're lucky enough to be told to give it the beans, death is close by. And I don't mean to sound over exaggerating, but it's really true. You're sitting with fuel tanks on each elbow. Your feet are the crash zone, and it's an engine with a couple of pieces of aluminum around it, and so it's like sitting on a shovel with a bomb behind you. Like it's crazy, and that's probably not politically correct, but the intensity of a turbocharged 917 is a double standard, because the 917K, the original Le Mans Steve McQueen car, was naturally aspirated, but when they turbocharged these cars and took the roof off them, shit got real. And I tell you that it's one of the most gratifying experiences I've ever had behind the wheel. So that car over there is like a church for me. It's a car that I just stand and I'm always in awe of, and I'm so grateful that I had a chance to drive one. But then again, to our left is a 935. The Martini 935 is another car that is so emotional, and when you drive it, you never feel like you put it on the very edge, because you have to make a matrix of stars align to really hit all the timing of the turbo lag, of the handling that some would say is questionable. It's a hard car to drive and a hard car to direct where you want it to go. And I say that a 935 handles really well in a straight line, because in the corners it's a lot of work physically, mentally. But what's better than having a toy that you never master? Like every single lap that I get in a 935, I'm always learning. It's always challenging me. So again, I could go on about 100 of these cars. I'm such a fanboy of all these cars, even after 2 decades. So I'll just give you those 2 examples of cars that I really just respect.
Many thanks. I guess that all of us would like to have a closer look at the cars. So I guess this is the time. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It was great to have you here. We wish you all a perfect event today as well as tomorrow. Of course, we are open to answering any of your questions. Both Wojtek and Patrick are at your disposal. Thank you very, very much.
Take me out to California. Take me out to California. I feel the day is coming to an end, and my eyes are drawn to southern skies. And all the while I was trying to pretend the promised land was there beyond the great divide. But I'll be coming home soon. Yeah, I'll be coming home soon. So take me out to California, where the sun is always high, where the streets are paved with gold and no one ever gets old. I'll be longing for that day till you come and take me home. California, California, here I come. I've seen it all upon the silver screen, the happy faces and a sign upon a hill. The wine is flowing and the fields forever green, and all your hopes and dreams will always be fulfilled. So I'll be coming real soon. Yeah, I'll be coming real soon. So take me where the sun is always high, where the streets